Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. I'm doing a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries and brokers from across the country. And joining me on this segment is Rene Brandon. He's the founder of Florida Business Exchange. Rene, welcome to the program.
It's actually Leopard Business, then the Florida Business Exchange.
Leopard Business and the Florida Business Exchange. Welcome.
Right. we have three offices, so that's the reason why.
Gotcha.
And 23 associates.
So, Rene, tell us a little bit about your work, and specifically tell us who are the types of clients that you specialize in working with and helping.
Okay, so we are what we classify as business brokers, which means we are licensed in the same way as residential real estate brokers are in Florida. But specifically as a business broker, I'm licensed to help buyers and sellers buy and sell businesses. And number two, the type of businesses that we engage with are Main Street businesses. So that covers the waterfront, anything from hospitality, manufacturing, distribution, retail, we handle that.
Often folks that are entrepreneurs and they start businesses, it's out of a passion for what it is they do. They may not be considering selling as one of their top priorities. So how many of the business owners that you work with actually even know where to start when it comes time to sell?
That's an excellent question. As a matter of fact, one of the videos on my website, the very first one that I did, explains that. And the answer to your question is 90% of all sellers of businesses have never sold a business before. And 90% of all people that buy businesses have never bought a business before. So it's extremely challenging dealing with those buyers and the sellers. They find business brokers largely through osmosis. And that means they will contact their bank manager, they'll contact their accountant, they'll contact their lawyer to see if they know anybody. Or they go on the internet and they do a search. And almost by accident, they'll fall into the lap of a broker who happens to have a listing that they like, either to buy the business or to get some idea of how to sell the business. So it's a very lackadaisical, very problematic process that they go through. And frequently they end up with brokers by default, as opposed to ending up with a broker that may be able to add some value to what it is they're trying to do.
One of the inspirations of this series is to shed a light on the services of a business intermediary and a broker and how they help business owners sell their businesses. So can we unpack that a little bit and give us a 10,000-foot view on like what are the key areas that you help these business owners prepare for the sale of their business?
Well, let me just give you my background, and this is where I basically distinguish myself from all of my peers. I've been in business for over 60 years, 20 years in corporate, in the corporate world, working for Xerox and Eaton in senior management capacities. So I bring with me that experience. Number two, I've had 20 years owning and operating my own businesses, everything from logistics, warehousing, food and beverage, distribution, etc., where I actually owned the business and actually was responsible for running the business across many sectors. That's 20 years. In the last 20 years, I've been basically doing M&A advisory work, M&A as in business brokerage. So given that experience, I bring that to bear when I'm dealing with a prospective buyer or a prospective seller, because I understand the process and the journey that either one of them is on. And I try to cut to the chase very quickly for them to make sure that their approach is going to be realistic and is going to deliver the results that they want. Buying a business is not like buying a house or selling a house. It's completely different. You know, buying or selling a house is all about visibility. drive through, show the property, here's the lockbox number, go and have a look, that type of approach. We're the opposite of that. It's highly confidential. Nobody likes to let their employees and competitors know that they want to sell their business, and so we have to be very protective of that. Number two, we have to explain to the seller, in this case, the process that we go through, because there are many parts to a business, whether you want to think about distribution, or whether you want to think about entertainment, or whether you want to think about manufacturing. Businesses are very complex animals, and there are lots of moving parts, and therefore the whole process of selling a business and buying a business is made up of about over 100 different components, in terms of looking at the business model, looking at the financial statements, looking at the staffing, looking at competitors, looking at their marketing. And what I bring to the table is I have experience across the breadth of that, so that I'm just not going to act as a guardsman, if you will, or as just a facilitator in terms of putting the two parties together. I go to a lot of trouble to analyze what it is the seller wants to do and what it is the buyer wants to do, so that we don't waste time.
Rene, a lot of moving parts to sell a business, and I understand that a lot of businesses are not properly prepared, and as much as 80% of them that go on the market end up unsold. Can you kind of give us some insight into what are the biggest key areas that you find that cause that breakdown and cause a business not to sell?
Lack of preparation. Lack of preparation is probably the biggest problem, which means taking into account all of the factors that a buyer is going to be looking for in terms of buying a business. And so again, what I try to do is I try to cover off on those, shall we call it, deficits or challenges in selling a business with the seller up front, so that we have a response to any comments that come back from a buyer about the business, whether it deals with their marketing, or whether it deals with their financial statements, or whether it deals with their staffing. So that's part of the job that I do to prepare the seller properly. But the process is not a 1, 2, 3 process. The process, if it's done properly, that is from the time that we sign an agreement with a seller to sell a business to the time that the business actually is sold, usually takes between 9 to 12 months. And in the course of that process, we of course get to know my approach is I get to know the business model. I get to know the strengths and the weaknesses of the business in terms of the staffing, competition, all of those other things that I've already mentioned. I look at the financial statements. I come to a determination as to what the business is worth. I square that off against what the seller is expecting in terms of a selling price. And once we've agreed on those things and I've gathered all the necessary material, then I put that into a confidential business profile. Usually it's about 20 to 30 pages, and that contains all of the information relative to the sale of the business, describes the business, location, the financial statements, the tax returns, the reconciliation of those two pieces of information, income statements, tax returns. And then what we do is we calculate an owner benefit or a cash flow that's available to a prospective buyer that is available to the owner. Once we've gathered all that information, we've compiled the confidential business profile, we then have that available. Meanwhile, we've listed the property or the business anonymously on about 6 or 7 different worldwide websites that specialize in buying and selling businesses. that has a huge audience worldwide. And prospective buyers and sellers go to those websites to have a look at what they want to look for. In the case of a buyer, that's what he does. And then he clicks on a business that he likes. That in turn is linked to the listing broker. If it's my listing, it would come directly to me. He may then deal directly with me, not through another broker, or he could be dealing through another broker, in which case we will cooperate with that broker. If the prospective buyer comes directly to me, which is 90% of the time, this is the way it happens, I then go through a qualification process of that buyer. I need to know who it is I'm dealing with. I need to have his credentials in terms of driver's license, address, et cetera, and most importantly, I need to know what his experience is and what his proof of funds is. I need to know that he has the financial wherewithal to buy a business, because businesses typically sell at the low end anywhere from, say, $300,000 all the way up to $5 or $6 million, typically in our space. So I then qualify the buyer. I satisfy myself that I can now release the confidential business profile to the buyer. They will have signed a confidentiality agreement, and they will have signed a confidential personal profile sheet. Once I have those, once I've discussed this with the buyer, I may also speak to the seller to make sure that he doesn't have a problem with it. And then if it's all go, only then do I send the confidential business profile. Once the confidential business profile goes out, the buyer has access to all of the information that's relevant. And then in a subsequent conversation that I choose to have with him or her, we arrange to either go to the next step, which is usually then a meeting with the actual seller. And that can either be on-site or off-site.
Rene, before I ask you my last question, is there anything that I didn't think to ask you that you feel is important to share with business owners that are considering selling in today's economy?
I think that the advice I would give is do the research, find a broker that you are compatible with. Don't just take the first broker that you come across. Network, do your own homework. You can do Google searches. You can contact several brokers, speak to them on the phone, and get a sense of where they're coming from to make sure that you're happy with that particular person.
Sage advice for business owners listening.
And that's also important from my standpoint. I need to make sure that whoever I'm dealing with, that we're compatible as well.
Yeah, let's talk about that. For business owners that are considering selling their business and they'd like to speak with you and meet with you to see if you're compatible, how can they find you and connect with you?
Thank you. Well, my website is leopardbiz.com. That's LEOPARDBIZ, all one word, leopardbiz.com. When you go to the homepage, you'll see my mugshot. You'll see several other videos. You'll see a menu. And if you go to the contact page, all my coordinates are on the contact page, my email address, my telephone number, and that gets directly to me, sir.
Terrific. Thank you so much for stopping by and sharing with my audience today. I really appreciate it, and I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
And Mark, if you ever decide to sell your business, give me a call.
I appreciate that. That was Rene Brandon, founder of Leopard Business and the Florida Business Exchange. And this segment's brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.